back.
So see Laurel in the bookstore about becoming a member of Beyond Baroque. Buy Steve's book and have an enjoyable evening. Steve, take it away.
And thank you very much for coming, and thanks to Richard and this worthy institution for having Rod and myself. One quick, I don't know, micro speech. I know, and I'm very glad that several people are here who do not regularly attend poetry readings, and some who may be here for the first time. Poetry has a very bad rap in this country. This is a nation of poetry, folks. People hate it and they fear it, and I could go into that for 2 hours, but happily I won't. I just want to ask you to don't struggle to decode the poem. Don't try to analyze its meaning. Listen to it as you would classical music or jazz. Listen to how the words attach to one another. Okay, thank you. I always like to begin a reading with somebody else's poem. I may roam a little bit, Mr. DeMille. Is that okay? Here is a poem for openers. Isn't it funny that princes and kings and clowns that caper in sawdust rings and simple folk like you and me are the builders of eternity? To each is given a bag of tools, a shapeless mass, and a set of rules, and each must build, ere time is flown, a stumbling block or a stepping stone. That is by that most prolific of poets, Anonymous, although it is attributed to somebody in Best Loved Poems of the American People, which is the most important poetry book. All right, all of that said and done, I'd like to begin readings with poems of welcoming, invocations, if you will. And here are two of such. This is called Gathering, and it's for everybody. In the room of 10,000 smiles, I wield this fiddle with friends and sing to the roof beams with the women. What matter if old death waits complacent in his rusty car somewhere up the road? Tonight, this is the only game in town. And here is another very short poem, again for everybody, but more specifically poets. And among poets, very specifically for Harry Northup, Celia Wallach, and Holly Prado, who were there one night with me in middle antiquity at the then existing comedy club in Santa Monica, who were going to give we poets an experimental gig. So we arrived, and the pay, as you were dinner, but we poets were not allowed to order the chicken. True fact. This puts me in mind of an old European saying, that is, when a poor Jew eats a chicken, one of them is sick. Okay, so here's what I call Gathering of Poets. It was conceived of that night, and that's why. Gathering of Poets. Only here am I citizen, only here do I recall that I forgot to breathe before. Now into the agonizing stuff. This is a longish poem, God forbid, and it's a kind of flagship poem of mine. It happened by, it's from 05 or 08, those were big years for me, but I didn't know it. And I stumbled on this thing and I loved it, and I like it. It's sort of what I can do. And it's in the memory of Nicky Selvitz, who was one of our contemporaries and a wonderful man, and perhaps the greatest spirit of us all, of we 60, 70 Bopper's poets. So here we go. This is Statement. The spacious jewel of a single deep breath on a crystal morning, of a mint-struck day or taut autumn afternoon, or awash in the soft and riotous breezes of summer's evening, just to be alive at all. Culture twisting without end, intrigue of meaning, vibrato of life, the ravishment of a single strawberry. I rejoice against my instructions in the world of movement and bodies and things. Orphaned now, on the globe and alone with it, I drink the planet's water, piss it back, and if ephemeral, I am whole, or nearly so. So here I live, a pinprick on this sprawling asphalt scab, backaches and root canals, the serial rebellion of the body, friends in dire trouble, grievous losses to Uncle Death, the dog next door incessantly barking, and the prick that owns it called neighbor. The variegated contents of the world in anguished and precarious balance, machine guns and languages, cesspools and prize roses, Dachau and St. Francis, Dante and children with cancer, Nobel Prizes and beheadings, populations rotting dead on the ground, the little girl burned by the side of the road, first loves, miracles of salvation, lives of hell. Still, that dirty street, this clean window, that bird slanting the sky, the sheer particularity of each, the utter suchness of it all, apparently forever. Shopping in a shopping center this day, drenched in the real, which isn't, hey, that guy is actually walking over there. So unworried at last, indemnified against fear, and ever nearer the frontier of myself being over, now I have time for eternity. With the horror unforgotten, what is mine are these: friends, exertions, songs in the corners of the morning. I walk down the days of my life, beatitude in opulent glory. I just realized reading is how, oh, thank you. Let's hear it. Come on, I'm no longer immune to praise, folks, as I was until I was 72. Thank you. I realized how much this owes to Nikki, and I didn't realize it. That enumeration of good things and bad things, cesspools and prize roses, which is an outright steal from Nikki. And, well, you know, like Gordon says, good poets imitate, great poets steal. Anyway, here's another poem. These are lyric poems, the first few. And I like lyric poems the best. Let's put it this way. This is called Hootenanny. You know what Hootenanny is, right? It's people get together, banjos and guitars, and sing the midnight special. I could demonstrate that, but I'll save that. We're not doing it. Folk songs, folk music, folkies. So this is Hootenanny. It has a superscription, a little squibbit of somebody else's literature that introduces your poem. So, Hootenanny. Music heard so deeply that it is not heard at all. But you are the music while the music lasts. Timothy Stearns Eliot, T.S. Eliot, from the Dry Salvages. We come in ones and twos this night, a gentle crescendo of persons more and more to the fold, an incremental chemistry of gathering of a slowly burgeoning critical mass. In a living room of one house on a planet spattered with blood, a world needing no other hell. Yet here, in placid but joyous fire, this rollicking effluvium of harmonies and somber canticles, we are inured to time. The irradiated air of this room, now for a while the very substance of eternity. Our small, magnificent rite, conjoined in the agape of mutual voice, transcendent and as one in the metal of love so mustered. We band of brothers and sisters, in our slender compact against death, this our beachhead of song. Thank you. Thank you. Liz, I hope you're not applauding because you remember the board and are trying to encourage hoopla. Then again, what the hell? Keep it up. I don't believe it for a minute. All right, you've endured 2 long poems and some extra poetic shenanigans. So, here are a few short poems, some very short. His face untitled. His face pressed against culture, the scream is impacted in his mouth as silence. Untitled. The future dances backward into the present. The present sprints headlong toward the past, and the past lobs aerial bombs at the future. Minnesota. I remember driving on the sere landscape under the broad, unsmiling pewter sky to the winter barren farm for Thanksgiving, and the land under our feet, like solid music. This is called African American, African/American, about a kid who I worked with who was an African, a brother from the old sod. African American, because that's when they get it over there. This kid in Rwanda is up at 3 o'clock in the morning watching the Lakers. The electricity sparks around the world. Maybe we have a chance. Now, this is called Elementary Poetics, a little poem about poems. And it's for Luis Galvez. And as a matter of fact, tonight for Luis Campos too, because you've seen one Luis, you've seen them all. Elementary Poetics. Hammer the silence with clattering words, the reverberation from its obdurate armor These are what we are after. Listen to the echoes. Now, another poem about how to make a poem, which I'm not going to read. This poem is called Make a Poem by Harry Northup.
Make a poem. Make a poem from pavement, fragmented and black, uneven, broken. Make a poem from an experience, memory, grief. Make an email a poem. Make a poem from tweets. Write it at intervals over a day. Make a poem from death and hunger. Make a poem out of embracing a fear. Make a poem out of wanting to tell someone something. Make a poem out of fear, vulnerability, poverty of spirit. Make a poem from poems that you've read. Poems come from poems. Read the language school poets as well as the romantic poets. While you struggle with learning the many forms, learn the tradition of poetry, especially the epics. Make a poem from tennis, sweet potatoes, and ruin. Make a poem from beauty and disgrace. Make a poem from bowing down to a greater craftsman. Make a poem out of women and men and trees, with jacaranda blossoms fallen on the sidewalk. Make a poem from hills and viaduct and sod houses and country roads and a 2-story red brick schoolhouse. Out of pride and discounted emotions, make a poem at evening.
Two things occur to me. I must be nuts to have that guy read in my program. So, here we go. This is a section called broadly, what the hell did I call it? Personae. It's about certain persons. One or two of them are me, apparently. And also having to do with compassion. It's a little heavy-handed. This is the tough sledding part. But it's medium-length poems. All right, untitled. The whiners are coming. They have surplus machine guns mounted on the handles of their shopping carts. And even now, they're panhandling for bullets. Hey bro, you got any spare 50 caliber? How'd you like it? Shopping cart lady. At eventide, the house lights of the world are dim in purple silver. The dried old woman of the street, rolling ahead her home of woven steel, croons to me in her madness. I sing back. This is John Doe during the Southern California floods of 1992, specifically February 12th, 1992. John Doe. I'm an unidentified homeless person, except to say that I am a male Caucasian, about 35, clad in a ski vest and khaki shorts. So when the flash flood came like a hammer, inundating the dry riverbed where I slept and killing me outright as I lay, that is how the television put it. I carried no papers. As I had lost my name while I was alive, there will be no finding it in death. They simply won't go to the expense. Why is it that so many people are relatively all right in their lives and I had to die twice? This is, I won't explain or justify this. It's called Plea. I am Windegg, he said. My life is shadow play, is ghost dance. I have walked aside from history, aside from blood, and reproduced nothing but these screeches in the wind heard from the mad god in my head. I have bequeathed to the future no germ of myself. Yet here I am, singing in the wind alone, hear me. This is for the children at Waco, and that would have been March 19th of 1993. Children at Waco. There aren't any words. Poets forever try to do this, and it never works. David knew the truth, was the truth, and David knew the apocalypse, so he wanted the apocalypse. And since he was the truth, he arranged his own apocalypse and took the children with him to it, in selfless, giving Christian love of a sort, because he knew for them, he knew for the children. Because David was God. Who is God, the little children asked. God is he who kills the little children. Perhaps at least the children thought that they would shortly be with Jesus and that everything would be all right. I have a book, oh yeah, which Richard very nicely plugged, called The Canon of the Lone Ranger. It's semi-autobiographical. I take him/me through every kind of misappropriated experience I know of, have lived, have heard about, have feared. So I'll read one poem, two poems from this, one now and one in my second segment. I should have mentioned, this format is a little different. Rod and I are both going to have slightly longer than bearable segments. And then a seventh inning stretch. I will not release you for a full intermission because I don't trust your concentration. Well, if I was in the audience, I'd be squirming already. Anyway, here's the, come on now, nice post-it notes. Yes, this is the Lone Ranger's boy. Anybody who doesn't know who the Lone Ranger is, that's feasible these days, but I don't think here. You are no longer young, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, this is the Lone Ranger's boyhood, a trinity. The Lone Ranger played on the beach, the South 40, and the streets of the city. He romped in the surf, hunted varmints in the wooded border of the field, and played punch ball on the asphalt. He enjoyed none of it. His father was a boatwright, a farmer, an attorney. His father never took him to work. His mother fed him, and fed him. The other boys in the neighborhood snarled at him, and girls were portrayed to him as Martians. He grew up with ashes burning blind behind his eyes, already coalescing into the mask. I really have learned to love my poetry, I swear to God. I say that without a scintilla of braggadocio, because that's not me. What happens is, I don't know I wrote the goddamn things. They attack me in swarms, and I write them down and I more or less fix them. And then I forget about them, and then I come upon them 8, 10, 12 years later, not knowing if it's a poem from the file name, and if it is, whose it is, and it's mine. And I say, Jesus Christ, did I write that? It may need a little facial cosmetics, but there you go. So I like what I'm reading. Job satisfaction. This is called Bachelors. The second after vertical high noon, the big hand slowly falling now past apogee, loves, sports, wars, and later afternoons of beer. This castle of men retreat for veterans, limp dicks, fair consideration given, all matters and beings, the habits of our dogs, a certain special tenderness for baby girls and young mothers, so that in unremitting but accustomed pain, there is for us, we soldiers of the afternoon, some dilute comfort. Good. Let's see how much. Making a bit of an estimate. Oh, we're almost home in this session. It's not too bad. God, I had to cut out mercilessly because oh, good. All right, this is called a fencing master. As some of you may know, I'm a fencing teacher, fencing instructor. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination a fencing master, which is a very august rank. Maybe there's 2,000 of these people in the world, including some women now. You have to be in the Olympics and they have to go to school for 2 years every day. I'm a kind of junior league, uncredentialed fencing master, not a maître d'armes, but a prévôt d'armes. Sometime acting prévôt d'armes. But here's the fencing master. I spend my time teaching the complicated, kinetic, airborne, fluctuating geometries of attack, defense, and deception. Purposive, task-oriented, problematic. This evanescent particular music played out this moment alone over a score composed of distance, timing, tempo, and perhaps some personal intuition of the other. It all rides on the back of trained, precognitive, lightning reflexive response, and is on balance quite strenuous, or aerobic, as they say these days. But it is about nothing. No money changes hands, no lives are sacrificed, no love is lost. The pretty pattern is all, I think. And me, well, I'm alive, and as I have devoted my life to this abstraction, I'm okay. Here, try it this way. And maybe, yes, almost penultimately, This is Freud. Freud appears on the back cover of The Lone Ranger. Where did I get this commercial mentality? He's dueling with the Lone Ranger, you know, not fencing, it's on. It's all for real. That's Freud in his hiking outfit. It's from a historical photograph. Everybody knows who Sigmund Freud is. Freud and the Lone Ranger, Joe Louis and FDR, and you're culturally familiar, as far as I can see. Beatles too. Freud. We do not truly know the contents of the head. It seems an inland sea with icebergs part submerged. Therefore we built models. The first of these was the world as seen through 5 lenses all in line, each one of which could vary its distortion independently. Another is of different rooms or chambers with gates and valves diverting and replacing the fluid stuff of consciousness. It is a matter of pressures and availabilities. Another, still in use, has to do with 3 competing but interdependent factories, such that one manufactures lust, another sense, guilt the third. It is technical. I will explain more later at my office. Lately, I have found a man to be a battleground for life and death. No mere scientific construct, this. The air is better here in London. The cancer in my jaw hurts less. Some days are actually without pain, allowing me a calmer gaze upon the mystery and the light. All right. All right, now the next poem, the title of the poem is the alphabetical character K. The poem is called K. Not the poem called K, just K, you know? The interesting thing about this poem is that it's by Mark Rhodes.
That's Steve Paul because no one thinks I can write an amusing poem. What? They're all so serious. Okay, okay. When we first met, we talked about Kafka. I knew very little about him, having read only one of his books, The Metamorphosis.
Yeah.
I'd also heard that he had a very tragic personal life, difficulties with family and with women. You remind me of Kafka, she said. I said, really? Am I that fucked up? He was a great writer, she replied. Well, sure, I said, so I guess that's a compliment. Is that what you meant? Would you like to sleep with me? She said. Right now, I said. I mean, tonight or later? Right now, here, this instant, let's just... So we went upstairs and did it on the bed that was covered with all the other guests' coats. The next day, she gave me her poems to read, which weren't very good, but I told her they were fantastic, that she should publish them. It's odd you remind me of Kafka, she said, because you really look nothing like him at all. Are you Jewish? Then she smiled, and then she frowned. You remind me of Sylvia Plath, I told her. Then said, it seems we were made for each other. She liked hearing that. I mean, it drove her into some kind of demonic sexual frenzy. And she grabbed me by the shirt and tore it open and had at me. After a while, we moved in together, the whole bit. We even had pet names for one another. I called her Lady Lovebug. And she, of course, called me Daddy.
Okay, let's see. Believe it or not, I have written many, many Zen poems. I have a full-length book which is complete and languishing for 10 years, you know. Maybe I gotta polish it up. I call it Middleweight Zen, the book, because I'm not an engaged Buddhist, but maybe I'm pinned. So here are a couple of, just 2 Zen poems, if they deserve that appellation. This first one I wrote a long time ago. It has a distinctive title of Zen. Zen. In the room of the white walls, there is a grenade perfectly balanced on the apex of a cone of shining glass. Your slightest movement will cause it to topple and explode, killing you. The fragments roses. Now this one, somehow or other Zen has a lot to do with walking for me. I take walks, and that's when I practice Zen, walking meditations, if you will. So here we go with this one. This is a sort of augmented poem. Yeah. This is Walking in Oppression, or the Zen of Walking in Oppression. Terrible, murderous oppression from another warrior heart roaring. Walk, ward off depression. Loosen shoulders, unclench asshole, breathe. Stop my talking inside my head. Mind empty. Let earphone Mozart do the talking. Singing along and conducting are okay. That was inept, and I think Vivaldi, my mistake. All right, second, Mozart. Look at that cloud. There is no payoff. This is all there is. And what the hell? And the hell with poetry. Looking at these roses is poetry enough. Now, I have, this is a throwback to Venice in the old days when poets would become completely confused about what they had, what they weren't. But then you had to do this, you see, to show that you don't want to read now. What was that showing? Frightening. Okay, two more. These are two poems, respectively showing what I think of work and school. Love these. This is commuting in LA. The freeway is a shrill and blooming buzzment of confusion, near beyond the command of human neurons, or a torture maze for snails. Work, the petty enforcing the absurd on the vulnerable. My blood sugar is low to crazy, but I'm all right. Cheese and crackers, the sacrament of the freeway, my commando dagger in my teeth. I didn't like orthodox working situations very much, with some single exceptions. And this is about education, or something about colleges and such. This is called B-. Those of you who have been to college, and those of you still victimized by it, will remember that it is a place where human flesh is cut up and graded according to USDA standards of meat quality. You will remember that an A meant excellent, outstanding, above and beyond, kudos, laudamus te. B was good, not bad, better than average or expected, vaguely commendable. B-, which is what I almost always got, was, as its coded name implies, almost good but not quite good, and given your vaunted ability, actually reprehensible. C and its cousins, C+ and C-, were shades of merely adequate, passing but pedestrian, dismal, ho-hum, lackluster. But in a culture such as ours, which prizes excellence, yeah, right, like hell it does, cast nonetheless by universal innuendo in a bad light, all the more. The gentleman C, indeed. D was worse yet. Passing but barely. Odious, ignominious, passing, yes, but just barely. Although out of the goodness of our hearts, asshole, and only that, we'll give you another chance, maybe. F and its pseudonym E stood, of course, for failure, the death warrant. When I die and go to heaven, the best I ever hope to hear from the voice booming above the feet of the almighty celestial throne is B-, Goldman, you get a B- for your life. B-, that's your final grade, Goldman, final and complete and eternal. So that then and there, at least, I may all aspirations cease. Thank you. Now this, because of Auden's dictum, in the prison of his days, teach the free man how to praise, I give praiseful introductions. The magazine, French movie magazine, Cahiers de Cinéma, its editorial policy was it never let anybody review a movie that it didn't like. That's what I do. So this is it's virtually a haiku for me. It's just under one page. And it may be, I've heard before from people who are introduced that it makes them uncomfortable. They don't feel they can live up to the kinds of praise that I manifest. Well, tonight that is exactly my purpose. I want to make Rod so uncomfortable that he fucks up his reading. He said, I look good. Bravo! All right, Roddo, put this in your pipe and smoke it. Oh, an announcement. Rod may not read poems I mention in this intro, and there's no requirement. That's okay. And nor is it kosher for me to confer with him ahead of time. I don't think. So here we go. Here we go. There are inner and outer poetries. Of the inner, poetry say about the nuances of your precious and difficult love life. And poetry of the outer, say the Iliad and the Odyssey, stuff that happens. All are well and good. All are part of the poetic endeavor. The indispensable poetic endeavor so utterly dispensed with in this malignant culture. But this is the poetry of both. Poetry of the skin, of the membrane where inner encounters outer, and the poetry of the interface where heart and soul meet the world, at once intensely personal and by proclamation intensely and inclusively public. It is the poetry of sacrifice, of the making of the sacred. Said another way, this poetry is the high poetry, for which expression I thank Roger Taus. It's the consummate expression I never wish I'd made up. Said another way, this poetry is the high poetry, which enunciates the eternal spiritual magnificence and agonies of human being in the world. This is the real stuff, so rare, if not totally obliterated in our world here and now. And this is lyric poetry, poetry which can only be sung. This is high poetry, primal poetry. Look for the glories of love, its variety of vectors and yes, deep pains, of sensuality, the varieties of egregious human degradation worldwide. Look for lament, grief, and rage at monstrosities we know all too well. So this is the world's poetry, the poetry of communion, a poetry of the waters of the mother planet and of the poet's geologist father's reverent care for and his stewardship of it, the father now made mythic by his son's poem. The human other in the very act of lovemaking. The boy killed in the war still walking, untouched by any bullet other than the one he fired through the other boy's chest. Poetry of the self en face with the world, with the very glories and god-awful horrors of our world. And this is poetry that is somehow redemptory of these horrid elements of the human estate. A poetry that shouts, glories, implores, reviles, sobs, grieves, agonizes, excoriates, celebrates, exalts. Hear this with your heart. Ultimately, this is poetry of the heart. That is what's important. Love, war, the earth, evil, the soul. I think this poetry is poetry for the ages. Rod Bradley.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now I can retire.
Yeah.
While I'm ahead of the game. Oh my gosh. Well, I must say that, well, I'm going to say Steve and I kind of vaguely knew each other years ago. And then a fellow poet named Paul Brooks passed away, and Steve asked me to video his memorial. And in the process of that happening, Steve and I sort of connected, and an email had been created, and we started, I was vaguely messing around with the poem, and I started sending him to Steve, and he said stuff like he just said, Right. And so I thought, hell, I don't know. I don't know from nothing when I write this stuff. Steve talked about writing them and forgetting them. Well, that's me too. So at any rate, I felt greatly encouraged. And so I guess I have to offer some of this up to prove that he is a great and generous friend and exaggerates, I hope, only horrifically. And at any rate, since Steve has given me such a magnificent kiss, I will read a few love poems. And this is called Unwanting a Kiss. I would like a kiss, but at this moment would settle for a green apple, like those when I was 12, those small green New Hampshire crab apples hanging on a stunted tree in an overgrown field. A modest, flawed, generous, sour, hard, tough little gymnastic apple. The worm has departed in the nick of time and become a tiny moth fluttering around a flashlight as a boy wanders through dewy grass, dreaming of the house on the hill where the 3 brothers and 4 sisters eat a fine supper every night, because the father is lucky and works hard, and the mother is beautiful, a mother from a movie. And someday he will marry her and have 7 beautiful children and live in a big brick house on a hill with 4 fireplaces and a Christmas tree, both inside and outside, and swings, and a big barn filled with things that once turned and hummed and plowed, giving off a magic perfume of rust. I want to bite a white door around the worm's abandoned portal and taste sunlight and earth and understand I am the worm and the moisture and the leaf, and these words are made of sunlight and dirt, trying to become little moths flying toward a light held by a boy in a night he no longer fears. And those times are the kisses. This is called Late to Work. Didn't happen that often that I was late for work. I'm kind of a punctual guy, like great Yankee New England hard-ass training. But this is called There Are Reasons to Be Late for
Run a
Work.
little more mic, maybe?
Oh, okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, my voice has gotten a little weak. So there are reasons to be late for work, and I count this among the best. Late to work. I emerge in a cloud of steam, and she is waiting in a stream of sunlight. 2 little white bows smile in her hair. She's wearing the black dress, the one that buttons up the front. 7 buttons undone. Just enough to allow a nipple glimpse to glint in my eyes for the 1000th time. Swelling the little man into a bow, all hot to shoot spirit arrows straight to her heart. She grins, her hand goes round, squeezes the little animal soul. Her whispers leave footprints as she kneels, opens her smile like the doors to a candle-flickering cathedral, and leads the silly warrior into the quiet meditation of her prayer and makes him so wholly sweet. Both of us miss the 8:28 to work. Okay. This is about my one and only one-night stand. And it's called One Night Stand. And it actually started not far from here.
after an evening at a poetry workshop. The wonder of entering a woman you have never entered before. Her sighs, her hands sliding down your back, her thoughts you want to decipher, your desire to make it right for her, your gratitude. I was young and a lot cuter. It is raining outside. 2 buildings over, an old man close to death dreams of a lost love. Meanwhile, your tongues entwine, your hips slowly work, and she likes it. And this makes it hard to hold back. Care has been taken not to let the seeds that will all too soon erupt find her fertility. How you found each other is a mystery. You met 6 hours ago, but you feel at home, as if you'd known her for years. You suspect this will prove an illusion, but at the moment it seems you feel a quiet affection, almost better than love. You keep working in that slow and steady way she likes, her breath feeding you cues, and then she tells you she's almost there. That this proves not a lie excites you beyond your careful plan. And when her back arches and meets your downward thrust, her breath hot in your ear, oh God, baby, yeah. Her fingernails clutching, and you try to hold on, but she's quivering, gushing, molten, her quaking explodes into your brain. And the pent-up seeds burst, pulsing in their rubber shroud. Outside, it is raining. She gently bites your lips. You want to taste the swollen, moist fig still holding him, and you wonder what to do with this little sack of seeds, and you worry he's softening, losing the delicious tension. So you scoot down and kiss her there, thrilled by the brush of her hair, thrilled by her taste faintly tainted by the hint of latex, thrilled by her hands grasping the back of your head, her giggles somersaulting into moans, and you discreetly knot the little sack of seeds. 2 buildings down, an old man in his tiny gray apartment sighs and dies, quite calmly in his sleep. You listen to the rain and the easy murmur of her breath, and it seems there are moments when life can be beautiful and people can be together, even as they remain alone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
One more love poem. This one, was a long time ago. I once lived in Venice, and those were among the most enjoyable years of my life, and a couple of blocks from here. And I'm now a long-time Venice exile, and reluctantly so it's always a thrill to come back here. This is called Tomatoes. I came home late from work, and your friend Jane was kissing you at 7:30 p.m. on an August evening in the early summer of our lives. On the counter, 1 tomato cut in half, exposing its glittering universe of seeds, 2 others waiting beside the green curves of the peppers, glinting under the faux Tiffany lamp found in an alley the day before. something simmering quietly on the stove. Her breast pressed against yours, her eyes closed, her mouth open to your tongue, steam diffusing your faces. I stood frozen, as if I'd come across two does in a meadow at twilight. Jane's eyes opened before I could disappear, and she was already moving away from the magnet of your breath, hiding her face, your eyes pulling mine, the little shrug in your smile, my little sorry smile back, and all of us finished cutting the tomatoes and cooking, laughing at gentle touches, drinking too much wine, my cock hard all night, thinking of the moisture between your legs and hers, all of us pretending nothing had happened, none of us clever or brave enough to splice the magic back together, to let the movie run toward some braver, more perfect, the end.
Right.
Last of the, am I doing all right with this thing? I probably am not, but just tell me, should I get closer, have it more aimed at me or something? Is it okay? Is it working okay? Okay, great. All right, great. All right.
That's good.
One more little love poem for fun. It's called Letters. Her letters crossed the continent, bearing songs and perfumes. I could feel her breath between the lines, taste the ink laid down in the sun, moisture seeping between her thighs, every paragraph a kiss, each envelope wet with invitation, every stamp a map to a meadow of moss. I guess this was before phone sex and texting, you know. Real letters. One day I mailed myself back, and she met me at an airport. We drove to a cabin on a lost coast, sketched a brief flawed novel of love on rented sheets. I still remember the rocks, the trees, the sea mingling with her sighs. Somewhere in a closet, the letters no longer read themselves over and over, and have forgotten who we are and what we did. Maybe because I've spent part of my life briefly, actually in Venice, trying to make my living, sort of half-ass living I actually managed to make on the street. I'm always sympathetic to people who work the street. And I used to play sax a little bit, and so it's very rare that you see a woman playing a saxophone on the street, and I was struck by this. It's called Saxophone Now. On Flower Street, in front of the library, where even the poor can attend their own university, bums with shopping baskets, feeding pigeons as her backdrop. Her notes insert themselves gently into the stale air, echo off passing buses, insinuate themselves into briefcases with wills and lawsuits, and synchronize with messenger bikes weaving through the traffic, skateboards stunting off the steps. Her tapestry of notes holding an apple of sorrow, reminding us even sadness can achieve perfection in an imperfect world. A few years ago, I had the distinct pleasure of spending some time in China trying to teach English to middle school children. And I was in one of the 7 spring cities of China for a couple of months. It's called Guiyang. It's about 1,000 kilometers directly inland west of Guangzhou, the old Canton. And it's a very beautiful, as they call it, a minor provincial city of 4 million people. And there I witnessed this. It's called Poems Written in Water, Guiyang, China. Each night they come, living on next to nothing, already ghosts. They've endured famine and flood and revolution, the beheadings of their companions, loves lost to the protocols of re-education. Yet each twilight they appear in this strange new bright night where mothers drive automobiles from Germany and America, and well-fed children play with tops that spin and flash and sing. There in the public square beside the polluted river, these old Chinese poets bring buckets of water and dollar mops to serve as transparent ink and calligraphic brush. As they write their poems between the evening strollers and singing tops, their old bodies dance again within the cage of time. The words flow in tiny rivers, luminous in the current of shadows, offering a wisdom without expectation to any who care to pause and take it in, their long and steady gaze at life before the passing footsteps and evening breeze return their wisdoms to the clouds. Which is all right, before your 7th inning stretch, one more little poem. I live now in South Central Los Angeles, as I've done for a couple of decades. And after I was exiled from Venice, I kept getting moved further and further east by my ramshackle economy. So I ended up there, and as I was actually just quoted by somebody saying, well, to survive in South Central, you either got to be a good Buddhist or a good gangster. So anyway, but and last night was one of the nights of aggravation because there were the usual Saturday night, all-night parties with great vibration and so forth, but no gunshots, which is always good. So this is called The Honey Inside. The bees are in the walls, making babies, gathering the semen of flowers inside the walls of my ramshackle ghetto house. Neighbors complain, but the bees are content. They are working as they were meant to work, happily bracing the walls with honeycomb, with buzzing, with living and dying, busy being bees, coating my walls with honey I will never eat. I'm happy with the bees in my walls, while everywhere else bees are mysteriously dying. My bees are building a happy empire, safe inside my walls, turning one hive into 3. 7 years now, I haven't been stung once. Should we allow people to take a real 7th inning stretch and get some stuff to eat or
We never rented a room, right?
Okay, you're not going to let them out? Okay.
No, all right.
Yeah.
Is the time now, though?
Yeah.
All right, folks, you can relax about 90 seconds.
Sing the national anthem. We have to sing the national anthem.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
Take,
All right.
take me out to the poetry.
Kind
so that I went babysit for all
I'm
day.
glad you came.
Darling care, so
Yes,
much.
you can. You can go to the stairs. Okay. What? You think I got him? All right. Forthwith, ladies and gentlemen, we will proceed with the second segment, which will be appreciably shorter than the first segment, both individually and collectively. What? Sit down. All right, tough one. Okay, there's my second segment, and it's a few things. The first poem here is untitled, and it was written by Beto Rosbeto.
When you've fallen, deeply scratched, your game face, a screaming sunset gash, una herida, a wound sipping out its sewage, gushing out all it can, left with what it can't. I pray to be bandaged. Hold out. Free.
This is my favorite thing to perform ever. It's a song, and that is because I wrote neither the lyrics nor the music. The music is an old blues, Delta blues, which begins as follows. When I hear that Casey whistle moan, etc. Now, that melody, that blues, just fits isomorphically to a very familiar poem of Yeats's, a very lovely, simple poem, which, so the whole recipe is as follows. When you are old and gray and full of sleep, and nodding by the fire, take down this book, and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once, and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace, and love your beauty with love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your ever-changing face. Then bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled, and crept upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. Take that in the spirit that it was for William Butler Yeats and a long dead, utterly anonymous black guy from the Mississippi Delta. Anyway, hey, okay. Wally, timing impeccable. You just missed my blues debut, but you can get a. All right, here's my last thing of the evening, and penultimate to Rod's next portion. I am trying to spearhead, if you will, a resurgence of rhymed poetry in this country. This is rather like batting your head on a handball court, but because of the utter resistance, utter fear of poetry. But it seems to me poetry has been rhymed up until about Eliot. All of the great moderns that I love, Yeats, Auden, Housman, on and on, Edward Arlington Robinson, others are rhymed poets. Shakespeare's a rhyme poet. Anyway, so this is a poem that I wrote, and it's called Archangel, and it's an existential cowboy poem. Aha! I was idly picking my nose one day when the Archangel Michael arrived. He said, "My boy, I've got something to say, and I hope you don't find it contrived." Well, as you can suppose, I was taken aback, but I still had the wit to say, "Sir, I didn't expect, it's a natural fact, to see an archangel today." That may very well be," says Mike, But the gist of my message is this: you haven't got all the time you might like to fritter away like piss. If you want to get your earthly work done in a fairly completed way, you better start cooking right away, son, I heard the archangel say. For no one is given an infinite time, not even old Methuselah, not even that consummate master of rhyme, Dennis Holt, though he moved to Missoula. So you'd better get it out of the way if your place in the world's to be earned. I really suggest that you start today. Before that is, the tables are turned. When the tables are turned, as I hope you've learned, as inexorably they must be, at the end of the thing, be you beggar and king, or king, you must all come visit with me. For each must come to visit me at my joint by the heavenly throne, or go on that day the opposite way, and each must go it alone. Then Mike rose to his feet, said it was nice to meet me, but now I must be on my way. But kid, take my advice, Hades ain't very nice. And he winked, and with that flew away. So I started to work that very same day to get my affairs in order, so that when the time comes, I won't be with those bums forever beyond heaven's border. So farewell and hail, and here, don't grow pale. At the end of my tale, cautionary, keep right on the beam and you'll have self-esteem, and all of your afterlife merry. Yes, set proper goals and avoid the hot coals of the dark nether realm of Gehenna. Do it today, and indeed right away, and I mean it. Don't wait for mañana. Thank you.
I've been writing a bunch of poems, I guess I hope they will become poems or are poems, about a character named Mr. Common, whom I call Mr. C. And I'm going to indulge myself in throwing a couple of these at you. Oh, I totally forgot. That was in the first half. Should we do that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think Steve made mention of my doing some poems that were serious. Oh, yeah, I skipped it. Okay, page 88. All right, can you take one? The lightness will follow. This one's a little bit on the heavy side. It's called Ode to the Unknown Veteran.
Oh, yeah.
He sleeps on the center divider in whatever city he happens to remember the name of. It does not much matter anymore. Neither does his mother's name, nor his father's, which he suspects he once knew. The vehicles hurry past, leaving their dust in his weary lungs that breathe on through the madness of kings, the idiocies of emperors, the arrogance of all those who know best. He breathes through the triumph of winners, through the tears of the losers, the rise and fall of empires, drawing in air that bears no embrace, no kiss, no love, breathing as if in a coma. He hasn't yet been paid for the last war, the one celebrated by the monument of the noble general astride his horse, with the one-eyed pigeon sitting on the reins, staining the names of his fallen comrades. Our veteran never had a horse, but he once had a house with a cat and daughter. Or was it a son and dog? He seems to recall uncles and a picture of ancestors from countries he never saw. He remembers flags and triumphal arches and the scent of burning flesh. He has built countless cardboard campsites in the shadows of shuttered doorways and under the arches of bridges where he sleeps and hopes not to dream of blood and bullets like the one he fired in the war 3 or 4 wars ago that traveled through a chest that housed a human heart just 22 years old much like his own. A bullet that refused to stop. Propelled by some ghostly momentum, it keeps circumnavigating the globe. Over and over, it finds him again on the center divider, not far from the monument where a one-eyed pigeon dwells.
So that was supposed to be in the first, and I just missed. Yeah, easy for me to miscues. Okay, so a little change of pace here. Back to Mr. Commons.
This is called Mr. Commons Throws Away His Underwear. He is throwing away his underwear. The one nobody has seen him remove since many administrations ago. The one with the discreet holes. And equally discreet stains of loneliness. The discreet fraying threads spun in Thailand, a land he has often dreamed of traveling to, pondering women and cuisine. He is vaguely aware he is bidding farewell to a forlorn history where his multi-purpose organ has served only functional and lonely yearning, much to his private embarrassment, and simultaneously revolting against his genteel poverty that has engendered a relentless impulse toward thrift. He still marvels at his motivation. A woman has told him he's still handsome, thinks of him as youthful. He is almost sure he did not dream this, and in hopes that this unlikely event might lead to an even more delicious reality, he dons his new black underwear in fervent hope and notes a pleasant bulge of anticipation. Sort of in the same vein, this is Mr. C at his most extravagant. Mr. C dreams heroic dreams of magic. He too would like to juggle 3 apples, a chainsaw, and a frog with a spinning plate atop his head to the applause of the crowd. As the chainsaw spins, spewing and whirling a dozen feet overhead, he flicks the knife at Miss Daisy Galore splayed against the target and bam! Slices off her left earring, hanging by a thread, which she catches between her toes, flicks upward to land deftly in her cleavage to wild applause. Meanwhile, the airborne chainsaw descends, slicing through the apples 1, 2, 3, and 6 gleaming hemispheric apples come down. Mr. C catches 2 in his teeth, all chomp and grin. The other 4 land deftly between the fingers of his left hand as he plucks the chainsaw 2 inches shy of his toes in the right, and with a deft pirouette, catches the frog in his pocket. Oh man, whistling and cheers while Miss Daisy Galore, all wet and glittering, steps unharmed beside him, the band falling all over itself, playing a Nino Rota soundtrack. Mr. C and Miss Daisy slow motion bow together, then out of sync for comic effect, she bites a halved apple from between his fingers, and he magics the chainsaw and the rest into the void, freeing his fingers for a brief wander over her tight little behind that wiggles a bit, echoes of last night, the crowd going wild, encore, encore. Miss Galore and Mr. C bow once more, and he glances up at Miss Tarzana Gold, trapeze artist extraordinaire, who winks, and he winks back, then disappears before the eyes of the astonished crowd. I think we'll skip Hummingbird.
Oh,
Nice way.
no.
No, this is called Wisdom of the Hummingbird. Iridescent spark of light, miniature dinosaur living in a tiny cup of stick and mud inside the dryer vent with your lady and her pearl-sized eggs. Hummingbird, I remember you in Kansas in your summer plentitude. When I was so plump with youth, the world seemed forever, and you seemed just my size. Without armor, you hovered with miraculous grace of a horizontal acrobat, spinning a plate of pure delight, raining light from a distant star over the petunias. How do you survive against all the odds? We hardly think of you as courageous, yet your unicorn beak recalls the lance of knights of old as you joust in the silent sex of flowers. You live on despite we human behemoths trumping the earth with our insistent inventiveness, invading the remote kingdoms where you once hovered in verdant Edens from California to Patagonia. Most of us never see you. Never mind give much thought to your intricate dance among the petals. Yet here you are, a bird as unlikely as a dodo or penguin, smaller than many an insect, a defiant miracle going about your business, making rounds of perfect give and take. Little hummingbird, I welcome you again. Now that my youth has flown, you seem to have grown in size. Your brilliant balance, your heart that somersaults at 100 beats a second, then rests in near hibernation, give me courage. You gather cast-off flotsam and bits of mud and spider silk to weave into a home. Your wings of light leave no mark. You make no trouble in death. And we, the so many and confused, alas for all our cleverness, seem oblivious to the wisdom of your grace. The Fly. I roll up the fourth draft of a story and wait like an assassin for a mammoth fly buzzing around the screen, searching. What the hell's he looking for? What's he want? How did he get so fat? My eyes dance with him as he keeps circling, the advanced Homo sapient who should be capable of admiring his clever patterns of flight, his miraculous eyes, the sparks of energy zapping from his fat whirligig body, his stunning aerobatics. I should even invite him to land on my glass, allow him a sip or two. But just as he touches down to lick the sweetness of sun and grape, the lizard brain blasts a mad fear that this filthy, buzzing, death-feeding protein is a cousin of those deer flies in Maine, gnashing and chewing my 8-year-old legs while I gutted a fish on a split log. In a flash, logic is mowed down, compassion flees, and the lizard eyes hone in. The fly appears a bit drunk, lulled into careless confidence. He lands on the metal shade of the single lamp, illuminating the chaos of my desk. His hind legs lift and sweep his legs as a hopeless fourth draft no one will ever read slams down. All right. I'm going to finish up with a little poem a couple of years ago. Oh my God, well, how time flies, as they say. 5 years ago, by a long convoluted thing, ended up in Ethiopia as the director of photography on an Ethiopian feature film. And incidentally, it was through that process that I actually met my good friend Alex Nova, who's sitting there, who's a brilliant director of photography. It happened because the thing went on, and I was determined to see it through to the end. I ended up being there on the Ethiopian New Year. So this is a little poem about that. It's called New Year in Addis Ababa. We are dancing around a fire in Addis Ababa. The ever unfinished new flower. Addis Ababa means new flower. Blossoming with sheep, grunts of diesel exhaust, cathedrals of eucalyptus scaffolding, lifting glass high-rises over the begging hands as the loudspeakers of priests moan interdictions down winding muddy streets where women float under white scarves toward the consolations of God. We are dancing around fire as our ancestors danced for thousands of years, singing, clapping. Perhaps a Savior will be born, a harvest gathered, a miracle witnessed. Brave New Year, bring us fresh blessings. Let the sheep bleat their last blood so we may eat. We clap and sing toward dawn, strangers dancing together in a circle of tiny hope around a teepee of flaming twigs, giving us the joy of their light. I'm going to run out and get the food, so please join us out there and eat a
Good keyboard.
Mr. Neil, please join him in reading Ezra Pound. He knows Pound incredibly well. And thank you, Steve. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it.
You're right, and I don't have anything else to say, so go eat the munchies and drink the booze.